All right, welcome everyone. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, ready? President McNall.
Here.
Vice President Clements. Here. Trustee Clemenson.
Here.
Trustee Headland.
Here.
Trustee Valentine. Here.
Great. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Ms. Shields.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the agenda as written.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? Great. Welcome, everyone. Hello. The Haldane Board of Education will soon recess for our tenure recognitions, and then we will eventually reconvene at approximately 7 p.m., I believe. But our workshop topic for this evening is the Campus Master Plan Draft Report. The next Board of Education meeting will be held on July 11th, 9 a.m. in the Auditorium. This will be our annual reorg meeting, and following that meeting, the board will convene for the board retreat at the Putnam History Museum. Dr. Benante.
Yes, welcome to our guests, and it's a very celebratory time of the year. Obviously, we had commencement this past weekend, our 8th grade moving up ceremony today, and our 5th grade moving up tomorrow, but it's also the time of the year where we recognize our tenure candidates, and we have them here before us this evening. So I just have a few words to share before we get the program started. And I wanted to just share a brief primer on tenure. And while the legal definition of tenure is pretty simple, it provides those who've demonstrated competence after a probationary period with due process rights before being removed. But it's also rooted in protecting our public teachers from nepotism and from favoritism, and that and ensures that the quality of our students' education is not subject to the political whims or arbitrary administrative decisions that sometimes can influence personnel decisions. And that's a very reasonable and important check and balance on our school system. Yet, tenure is as good as the process behind it. And we've given a lot of attention to the review process over the past 5 years, and I have a high level of confidence that tonight's candidates have demonstrated the core competencies necessary to be an effective educator. We're effective educators, and equally have demonstrated our core values as an organization. They are service-oriented, they are team players, they have a can-do attitude, they're adaptable, and they're emotionally intelligent. Our candidates tonight also know that the learning is not done. Yes, it's only just begun. And the nature of service demands that we continually strive to find new ways to support our students in their learning. As our students change, so must we. So congratulations again to this evening's candidates. And to get us started, I'd ask Mrs. Sniffen to lead us off. And Mrs. Sniffen, I'll give you the choice. Ms. DeSocio or Ms. Kachin, who do you want to start with?
I think I'm going to start with Ms. Kachin, only
Okay.
because she has 3 children under the age of 5.
Yes, I noticed that. It's a very young audience tonight.
It's my pleasure to be here tonight to speak on behalf of Amanda Kachin. Amanda came to us starting as a maternity leave and filled that role very quickly with ease. Amanda then was a guidance counselor through COVID, which was quite difficult, but oftentimes whether it's making home visits, knocking on doors, ensuring that students are getting online and doing what they need to do academically. In addition to that, Amanda came to us with an enormous amount of background knowledge on the college process and assisting students in that. We've continued to work together on expanding our programming for students that are non-college bound. Amanda's taken a big lead on that as well. In addition to that, some of the things that Amanda can point to are the Junior Parent Handbook, which, if you haven't seen, is full of information. If anybody wants a copy of it, I'm sure we have a few extras. If you want to start planning early, you too may get one. Oftentimes, Jeff and I would be sitting there saying, I don't know, I don't understand. Like, this is crazy. I don't know how to do that part. And then Amanda would say, have you looked at page 17 of the handbook I gave you? Oh yeah, it's right there. Sorry. We could have looked at that. So I can't say enough about Amanda. When we talk about the values that Dr. Benante just talked about, we talked about a team player, somebody who's really there for the students. Amanda can be seen at multiple events, whether it's all the way up in Glens Falls or all the way out in Long Island. She's often traveling and following our students. She's been instrumental in thinking creatively and outside the box as it relates to our master schedule. And she's just a pleasure to have at the high school. So with that, congratulations. Not quite yet, Amanda, but Amanda, if you could come up. You could bring Reese with you. It's okay.
Not to worry, no speech required, Ms. Cochin, but a small token of our appreciation for you. Congratulations. Thank you, Ms. Cochin. Yep, and
Great.
I'll let you keep rolling, Mrs. Smith.
Keep rolling. So Ms. DeSocio has been with us for 3 years, so she received tenure in a prior district, so her tenure is 3 years here at Haldane. And when we went through the interview process, we were really focused on the best candidate, obviously, but also a candidate with a really strong background in writing. And feeling like we needed somebody to balance out our team and really look at writing as an integral part of the freshman experience as they come into high school. So Ms. DeSocio teaches all freshman classes and then has an elective in any given year depending on enrollment size. But she really has worked on the writing program within the freshman class. Anytime you walk in that room, if students aren't journaling, she's working one-on-one with students, revising, editing. We were just having a conversation right now about how they were writing their personal, they're writing a personal piece, and it's their last writing piece of the year. And she was debating a little bit like, gee, do you do that at the beginning of the year where you learn so much about them, or do you do it at the end of the year? And how nice it was to read them at the end of the year, seeing their growth and development in not only the craft of writing, but the comfort level that the students now have with her to share their stories and to share some of their family backgrounds and to share some of their struggles, maybe even through high school. So I thought that was an interesting conversation that we were just having now. But some of the traits that I would also say about Ms. DeSocio is that she's a lifelong learner. She is definitely here to serve. She is one of the best at communicating with families and reaching out and discussing strengths or potentially areas of concerns that she may see with students. So always available 10th period, always there for them. And I'd like to just congratulate soon to be tenured Ms. DeSocio.
Thank you, Mrs. Sniffen. Ms. Gemmin, there you are. All right.
I have the pleasure of recommending Ms. Pastula for tenure. So Amy joined us in 2020, and she left a tenured position in New York City for a 1-year teaching job here, which was a leap of faith that things were just going to work out the way they were supposed to be. And that's worked out well for her, and it's worked out well for us. She came in that first year, her position was something we were, quite frankly, making up what it was going to look like. How could you remotely teach third and fourth grader, or second and third graders at the same time when they were only quarantined for 10 days, but some of your class was going to be remote for the whole year, and you were working with 6 different teachers at the same time on doing all of that in one virtual Zoom classroom? I'm not quite sure, except that Amy came in and with her professionalism and her knowledge of students and just her creativity and perseverance, she made it work. And the students that were with her for the full year, the one thing they said when they started to come visit the campus in the spring when the weather was nice and things were a little bit better was, all right, I'll come visit, but only if I can find Miss Pastula and I can see her in person. And she was a source of comfort and reassurance for them as they came to visit our campus. For the last 2 years, she joined our AIS team and she expanded our program. She's worked on supporting our students with math and has taken additional trainings to support literacy intervention. Anything we've asked her to do, she's jumped in and tried it with students. When you walk into her room, not only does Ms. Pastula have a growth mindset, but her students are talking about their goals, how they're working on them, what they're doing to achieve them, where they started, where they're going, and she communicates that with them, they communicate with her, and she keeps our families up to date on how their children are growing throughout the year. So I couldn't ask for a better system within a program that's designed to support our students with the biggest needs. So it is without hesitation that I say congratulations to Ms. Pastula. Almost.
You remember unique things through the interview process. Ms. Pastula was the first person I have ever interviewed outside, just given the times, at the picnic table. Yep, we were at the picnic table, 6 feet apart. First outdoor interview. I have the pleasure to present Christine Jamin to you as a tenure candidate this evening. Christine has been our elementary principal over the past 4 years and continues to lead our school through what has been a unique period of time in public schools, as has been noted this evening. And I really try not to overemphasize the result of the pandemic because we all lived it. That being said, I think Haldane was able to navigate the pandemic really well. And it was hard, no doubt, but we did a really good job, and Christine was an integral member of our team and our success through that. Her steadiness, her responsiveness, her planning, her focus on keeping Haldane Elementary School open for kids were instrumental through that period of time. Christine understands and models what it means to keep what's best for students at the core of her service to our community. She has continually introduced student voice into the school and its daily operations, including an application process for our kids to have roles and responsibilities each day, which is really cool. Christine has helped to develop the district's intervention support model. She's expanded student access to intervention in reading and mathematics. She's worked to bring the K-5 report card revision to closure, a process that spanned Christine's work, also Mr. Wallach's work with the building some years prior, but was interrupted by the pandemic, and it was important to bring that to closure over the last 2 years. And she's remained responsive to the feedback that has been provided by students and faculty along the way. Lastly, I'd just like to mention, we've talked about our core values. Christine is a learner through and through. She's demonstrated a commitment to making sure that the students of Haldane Elementary School receive the best academic, social, and emotional experience at school. And it's with great pleasure I present her to you for tenure this evening. Now, for our board, several of our tenure candidates have family members here with them this evening, so I know you'll be very interested in meeting them. And we also, for our tenure candidates, have some cake and some light refreshments for you and for your family this evening. So, Sean, if it's okay with you, we'll take a brief recess and then come back to start the more formal parts of the meeting in a little bit.
Great.
Great.
Shall I make a recess?
Yeah.
All right, let's do. I think we do. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Great.
Perfect. Shall we resume our meeting? All right. I guess I need to make a motion. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Great. Shall we?
Yes, and I just wanted to mention, I know Mrs. Sniffen, I'm sure will include this in her remarks, but on Saturday, we had a wonderful graduation commencement exercises for our class of 2023. It turned out to be a great day. Thank you, Julia, and your team, for everybody behind the scenes who works very hard to make sure that a ceremony comes together like that. And it was a great way to honor our kids and their families, and great event overall. And again, I know Julia will share some more details during her report. We have the Campus Master Plan draft report on the agenda this evening. I'd like to, again, to welcome back Melissa Rankowitz from CS Arch, who's going to take the podium, and the report will be highlighted behind me here, so I will move. I just want to, in setting this up for the board, to make the board aware that the Campus Master Plan Committee met last week to review the draft report. Some feedback was provided that's already been accounted for in this current draft that you have before you this evening. And really, for tonight's overview, I asked Melissa to focus on a few key elements. First, the community feedback process that we went through early on in the process, probably about a year ago, if you will, through the surveys and focus groups that were met with late last year, through the summer and into the fall. How that feedback connected to the goals that are included in the report, and then how those goals are then reflected in each of the projects that are listed. There's 3 projects that are listed in the report, so where are those goals that are reflected in each of those projects? So Melissa's going to focus on those elements as a basis for her report this evening, and then I know she'll answer any questions that you have. I'm sure there'll be quite a few. Melissa, welcome back. Scoot on the end over there.
Thank you for having me. Good to be back. It's been a little while, for most of you anyway. So we're just going to give an overview of the Campus Master Plan. Again, this is in draft format. I'm sure Dr. Benante will give some closing remarks as far as timeline, expectations for when we anticipate wrapping this up and actually having a final report for you, as well as the process to get your feedback and input and get those revisions incorporated. Today's goal is really just to walk you through the draft. I understand you've seen it before, so I won't really labor over the table of contents or any of the nitty-gritty portions here. I will stop at a few different sections that I think I would like to highlight, and then at any point in time, if you'd like me to slow down and spend a little more time on any particular area or go back, I can certainly do that. So what I wanted to first discuss is really the analysis section. And for us, this is really the collection of the quantitative and qualitative data. So we've gone through all of the existing documents that have been providing to us, all your existing blueprints and previous reports of exploration that have been done by the district. And then really it was a combination of that qualitative and quantitative analysis where we met with people and had those surveys and polls and such. So let me give a brief overview. Some of this is probably repeat information from previous meetings that I've attended, but it really plays into where we are now and how we got there. So first was the outreach and engagement portion, and we have a Campus Master Plan committee that the district has put together, roughly 30 members, I think, somewhere around there. And then from that, there's a leadership team. So while we did meet with the Campus Master Plan committee throughout the process, we met with that leadership team many more instances throughout that process, and that was really our first initial way to gather information or present the information that we have gathered and filter it through. And then there's a few different portions, so really 3 additional layers of analysis for us. So the first was focus groups. We met with that leadership team, discussed who we should be meeting with, and established all of those focus groups. So I'll just remind you who we have met with to date. We met with staff, both an administrative team, and that was largely a walk and talk. So we walked all the all your buildings with your administrators, your principals and leaders, talked about what we were seeing, and then actually sat down and had that meeting. We met with your curriculum council, so staff again in another format. We met with students, both high school representatives and recent graduates. We met with the PTA, and then there was a large portion of that PTA group that was representing the outdoor integration program, so we definitely heard some voices from them as well. We met with parents in terms of the Haldane School Foundation. We met with folks from the PE and athletics, and then as well as the Haldane Arts Alliance. So through all of those focus groups, we actually got, I think, the bulk of our knowledge from really the stakeholders, the users of your facilities, on where are the deficiencies and shortcomings, where are the goals, what are the future outlooks for your district, and what are we hoping to do in the future. The next portion of our analysis is in terms of community outreach. So there was 2 portions to that. We did have one open community forum. It wasn't largely attended, but we did have the community survey that went out to everyone. So that includes students, staff, and all community members. And there was actually great responses through that process. And so our takeaways from there are a few different things. One, we understood where the community places importance. And so first is an educational space, that was the highest, as well as safety and security and the support of student wellness. So when we talk about the goals for this campus master plan and why we've developed some of the things that we did, those are the things we come back to. That's the takeaway there, is it's educational space, safety and security, and supporting that student wellness that really rose to the importance of your community members. Additionally, and this is a really important point, 31% of the community respondents felt that the high school lacks sufficient educational space. So again, that becomes one of our goals moving forward. And then lastly, we really gained a lot of information and insight from this community survey is in the responses, the written responses. So not necessarily the multiple choice questions, but in the written responses. And so rising to the top there are needs for cafeteria improvements, or particularly cafeteria space for high school students, need for an auditorium or a true auditorium, improvements to athletic play fields, visual arts, desires for air conditioning, just modernization of the facilities in general, support of STEAM or STEM facilities, and then more outdoor integration or outdoor education integration. So that's a summary of what we got from that community survey portion. Next is the equity study. And our takeaways here, again, we polled multiple different schools and did an evaluation there. The takeaways there are the average school in your area, in your region that we're comparing to, has a square foot average per student of 2,005 square feet. But Haldane only offers 148 square feet per student. So as we talk about future projects and adding spaces, I can go back and share with you the numbers of how we're able to improve upon that. But really that's one of the large takeaways of this equity study, is just the lack for educational space comparatively to other districts. And then the other thing that came out of there was a lack of auditorium, whereas other districts do have a true auditorium, Haldane does not. So we'll move on to the master plan goals. So all of that information we gather, we work through that in our office, we talk about a lot of things. Again, we met with the leadership committee many times. All that information we gathered, and we identified 10 goals. Hopefully you've read this. I don't want to read all of these subtopics, but I will read you the 10 overarching goals that we've established, because I do think they're important. And again, there's kind of subheadings for each one of these. But our goals that we established are to improve safety and security, to improve accessibility, to improve the support of student services and student wellness, to improve student experience with student-focused program space, to improve performing arts space, improve visual arts space, improve the physical education and athletic space, improve campus circulation, improve staff support space, and improve outdoor education integration. So again, all that analysis that we've gathered, that's where we've identified the 10 goals for this campus master plan and the things that we think we need to achieve, or that collectively you need to achieve over these proposed projects. The next portion of the campus master plan that you're seeing is the section on proposed improvements. I'm not really going to go over these tonight, but these are all the different areas that you've already seen. So broken down into the 5 areas, again, we have academic and program, safety and security, physical education and athletics, site work, and facility or infrastructure improvements. So all of our recommendations we categorized into one of those 5 categories. And then we've broken down for each one of these, we've identified what is the need, why are we proposing this, what is the goal, and then how are we actually achieving that. So for each of these items here, you'll see that identified need, goal, and proposed solution for each one of them. I will remind you the 3 biggest things that came out of this are 3 proposed large building additions. So one being, and all 3 of them are at the high school, one being a student center to the east side of the high school, which includes a student center which serves as a cafeteria space for high school students, as well as student support suite offices to improve that student wellness, 4 additional classrooms so that you're able to extract classroom use out of the Mabel Merritt building and support that in the high school building, as well as a STEAM innovation lab to support more modern facilities for STEAM or STEM instruction. And so that is one proposed addition at the high school. The second proposed addition at the high school, and actually I can put that's a snippet of that one there. The next largest addition is an auditorium at the high school. This is now at the west end of the high school. So this includes an auditorium with stage and theater support areas, a lobby, restrooms for that area, as well as a music classroom, again, to help alleviate some of the stress of the facilities in this building and providing that instructional space in the high school. And then the third addition is also at the west side on the back portion of that first addition that we proposed, and this is an additional gymnasium and locker rooms for the high school. So those are the three large building components and the three largest scope areas that are going to have the highest price tag. As we've shown before, there's many other smaller building additions, a little extension for STEAM support space in this building, an extension for a fitness center, for an art gallery and such, but those were just the three large ones. There's also many renovation areas proposed, the largest being reconfiguration of this main office and nurse suite at the front entrance of this main building here. So I won't go over all of these proposed additions, but every single scope item is broken out in here in greater detail with graphics to support that. Moving on to physical education and athletics, again, we have the overall site plan, and then each one of those proposed improvements is broken down in a similar format. And then facility and infrastructure improvements, because they don't really have graphic supplements to them. It's a lot of, boiler replacements and piping and floors and ceilings. We don't bother breaking down the graphic supplements to those. So what does that all mean? Obviously, the goal here is to outline for the district multiple different projects. So as we talked through this, where we landed was we thought 3 projects seemed reasonable. Project 1, we gave a timeline of 1 year, and we're saying 1 year, but that's hopefully something that you would potentially vote on maybe in May of next spring. And then you would, go through the design process for that, and then eventual bidding out and construction. And so that is what we're calling Project 1 of a timeline of 1 year. Project 2, we anticipate being 5 years. That could be 5, 7, 8 years, but we're roughly saying about 5-year time frame for Project 2. And then Project 3 is 10 years or longer. So how did we determine what goes into each one of those projects? Again, this is in draft format. We would love feedback if you have strong feelings of what should be in Project 1, 2, or 3. What we did is outline what we thought made sense. We did present this to the Campus Master Plan Committee. We got a little feedback. I know there's a couple thoughts here or there, but what I'm going to do is share with you the overarching things of how we decided what was in Project 1, 2, and 3 at this point. Project 1 includes items that we prioritized because they have the greatest student impact. So that includes, for us, the student center with additional classrooms, being able to get out of the Mabel Merritt building, provide that needed cafeteria and social space and student wellness space for the high school. We felt that was, to us, the highest, greatest need and had the highest student impact. So we put that in Project 1. Project 1 also includes all safety and security items. Because they're safety and security items, you're always going to want to prioritize those. Project 1 also includes items that are in immediate need of replacement. So anything that your building conditions survey or our own facility assessment team deemed is in need of replacement immediately. It's reached the end of its useful life, it's going to fail soon. Things of that nature are in Project 1. And then lastly in Project 1 are items that are more district-wide systems. Boiler conversions, phone, PA, security alarms, fire alarms, all of those things that are district-wide communications and life safety systems, boiler replacements, things that as you do more additions and more renovations, you're going to want those systems in place to support that work. So that's largely what makes up Project 1. Project 2 is kind of the middle of the road between 1 and 3. So Project 2 ends up being things that we deemed are a secondary level of prioritization. So they do still have student impact, but we tried not to put everything in Project 1. I mean, in an ideal world, everything on this list would be Project 1. We know that, but we also know that that's probably not realistic or achievable for the district. So we have to identify some things have a secondary level of prioritization. And then it's also, Project 2 also includes items that have a little bit longer of a lifespan left. So if these are items that we don't think need to be replaced within the next 5 years, but probably can't wait 10 years or longer, those items fall in Project 2. Lastly, Project 3 are the things that have the lower priority of student impact. Again, everything does have impact, but these are the lower priority items, or things that have a 10 to 15-year lifespan remaining. And then Project 3 also includes things that you may actually not want to include at the end of the day, things that could be deferred. So if it's something that could potentially be a maintenance item, we put it in Project 3. Hopefully between now and then you can get to it on your own, maybe replacing some rotting soffits and things of that. Those are smaller maintenance items that the district could take on and maybe don't need to be captured in a capital project. Also, smaller things that could be potential for a capital outlay project or a $100,000 project. You can do one of those every year. And other things such as all the ADA accessibility improvements to the Mabel Merritt building, to provide the expense of an elevator and renovations to everything to make that building ADA compliant and really fully accessible. You may realize that that's really, you're not getting a return on your investment there. And so once you've extracted the instructional use out of that building, you may not really want to make a large investment there. So we've put it in Project 3 so that it gives you time to decide what you really want to do with that building. Our campus master plan didn't really come up with anything that seemed logical. We talked about, an art center or a planning and professional development center, but nothing really seemed practical and seemed worthwhile for the investment when we're making other investments in their other buildings. Lastly, the gym addition fell in Project 3 because you may find as you build what we're considering or proposing for Project 2 is the auditorium. If you build that in Project 2, you may find that you've alleviated the stress of your existing gymnasium functions and larger event assembly functions in this building, and maybe you don't need the gym after all. So putting the gym in Project 3, again, allows the district time to live with the improvements over the years and really determine if you need that. So any questions on how we gathered our analysis or how we determined what was in Project 1, 2, or 3?
I think this, you just said it, but the auditorium, the auditorium is phase 2.
Yes, so the 3, as I mentioned, there's the 3 large building additions. The student center we put in Project 1.
With the classrooms.
Yes, with the classrooms, correct. The auditorium with the music classroom we put in Project 2, and the gymnasium with the locker rooms we put in Project 3. We can certainly move the auditorium to Project 1. It obviously raises the cost of Project 1, but it, could enable you to do both of those projects. We're also trying to balance the cost of all 3 of these projects to something that we think might be more achievable or palatable for your community. But you know your community best, so certainly any feedback is welcome.
Just a quick question. Pardon me, I was leafing through stuff while you were talking. So I think I got most of it, but you never know. In Project 1, so Project 1, as big chunks are student center and classrooms, relieve Mabel Merritt. But I also noticed it also does the reconfiguration of the office and PTOT, psych, all that sort of stuff in the main building as well?
Correct,
Okay,
because both of those actually provide student support of the student wellness. And we
Absolutely.
identified that as a
Totally.
goal. We thought that was important.
Yep.
If we're doing it at the high school, we should be doing it at the main building
Yep.
for equity, and we just thought that that was
Okay.
important. The conversion of the remaining balcony area for additional offices wouldn't happen until Project 2 because the auditorium wouldn't be built until Project 2 as we're proposing.
Right.
So there's a
Yep.
few things that are kind of a domino effect and need to be pieced together.
Yep.
But the large swap of the main office and all those support suites are in Project 1.
And that also would free up some of the split existing classrooms?
So in our in that plan, you're taking over 2 classrooms to make it work, so
Okay.
it's really a net zero.
It's a wash.
It's a wash,
Okay,
yeah.
Yep,
I
okay.
can go back to that really quick.
No, that's okay. Okay.
Okay. Well, while you're thinking, I can go there, yeah. So in that green area,
Yep.
the upper right, there's
Oh,
actually
right.
2 classrooms there that we wipe out to make that, so it would just be a swap
So
of.
that's what you.
Yep.
Okay.
So if there's no other questions, I just wanted to continue and share a little bit more information about what Project 1, 2, and 3 do for you. So if we go back to that equity study and the square footage that you're providing per student, again, Haldane is currently providing 148 square feet per person or per student, with the average being 205. Project 1, with that student center and classroom addition, gets you up to 172. Project 2, adding the auditorium, gets you to 191, and Project 3 with the gym gets you to 208. Those projects also do include the smaller additions for fitness center, STEM, and gallery and such. So depending on what project those landed in, that's included in that additional square foot space as well. So Project 1 is getting you a lot closer. It's certainly an improvement. Project 2 gets you almost there. Project 3 gets you over that threshold. And that wasn't necessarily the goal. We weren't adding square footage to say, oh, we need 10 more, we need 20 more. We put the program space in, then did the calculations to see where we land.
No, I mean, I think that's a useful way to talk about it, because it says, like, even if we were to do all 3, it's not unreal, it's not unreasonable,
It's not
right?
over the top,
bringing
it's
the
not
district-
outlandish,
It's
yeah.
bringing the district in line in terms of having the kinds of space that other districts have.
Yes.
But I do understand that that wasn't the goal to, right, I mean, because we don't necessarily,
Yeah.
How big is your house?
Like, everybody has to have the same size house.
Right.
We don't get the same reimbursement rates as other schools do for building projects.
Oh, yeah, I'm not actually
Yeah.
saying that it's important for us to necessarily be on par. It's just a point. For me personally, I don't think it's important that we have the same amount of space as other districts. I just thought it was interesting that even if we were to undertake a significant number of do these projects, that it wouldn't put us out of line with everybody else.
Yeah, if there were community members that felt like, oh, you're adding so much space, you're not
Yeah,
above and beyond
That's-
comparatively.
that's
It's bringing
exactly
you
the
right in
point I was
line.
trying to make, yeah.
Yes. So I'll give you some overviews of just the overall dollar figures, and then I'm going to give a little closer look at the spreadsheet and how we arrived at these numbers. But Project 1 comes in at $35,731,000. Project 2, this one does include escalation for being 5 years out, is $41.8 million roughly. And Project 3, again, additional escalation, you're a little over $30 million. It's $30,394,000. All right, so let me get back to where I was on the screen here. So there is a summary page for each one of these that breaks down which scope items are currently proposed for Project 1, 2, and 3. So if you want to look through what is included in each of those projects, all that information is in there. It's broken down by item number, by category, and then the description. And you can certainly cross-reference that with the overall spreadsheet if you're looking for, a specific dollar figure. This is the summary of the project. And so this helps you understand basically a framework for what are you looking at and how do you want to categorize it. So the top spreadsheet here, or top chart here, gives you a budget by category. So those 5 categories, that's the colored areas. So if you want to know how much of an investment you're making in safety or in program or in facility and infrastructure improvements, you can see the total for those areas as well as how that's broken out per building. That is all today's dollars. That is all Project 1 dollars. The second chart, the upper portion, the actual chart itself, is again in Project 1 dollars. This is now breaking it down by building. How much money of an investment is it per building? And then how does that break down into each project? So the costs for each building in project 1, 2, and 3. And that first row of total numbers there is the project 1 or today's dollar values. You can see that we've added an additional escalation cost for project 2 and project 3 because they are several years away. And so you can see the total figures for those. And again, it's just project 2 and 3 that are adding that escalation factor there. When we get to the full spreadsheet, I just wanted to help you read this in case there was any questions on what you're seeing in this chart. So across the top of each one of these rows, the first column is an item number. That just gives us a way of tracking each item number. It's the building that work is proposed for. Then again, those colors are the categories, safety and program and such. The next column is the project that it's in. So you'll see a 1, 2, or 3 in those columns. And this is when it's a live spreadsheet for us. When we put a 1 in there, it tracks for the 1 and 2 and 3. It's live for us. You may see a few zeros. That is because there's a handful of items on the spreadsheet that offer 2 different ways to do something. I'll use the tennis courts as an example. There's one line item that says renovate the existing 2 tennis courts. There's another line item that says renovate those and add 4 more so that we have a 6-court tennis court facility. We wouldn't want to add both of those costs in here. So you'll see that the 6-court tennis court has a 1, 2, or 3. The 2 tennis court option right now is a 0 because we deemed that as the lesser ideal option to proceed with. All right, so moving over, you can see the project description. The first few columns are quantity, unit, cost. So whether we're looking at a lump sum for a certain item or square foot cost for an area, all that tracks to your subtotal. The next column you'll see is called estimate contingency. We are adding 10% as an estimating contingency. This is a campus master plan. It is high level. We know we're not getting all the details in here. When we do this, we add a 10% estimate contingency for that purpose because this is just a high level campus master plan. The next column adds 9% escalation. That is escalation for these project 1 because by the time you actually bid the project, you're several years out. So we are adding an escalation factor to the midpoint of the project is what our estimators use. And this estimate is put together by a third-party company, but with input from our office so that they understand the scope and everything. They add a 9% escalation factor knowing that you're getting to that bid point several years out. Your next column adds a 10% construction contingency. As unforeseen things come up, we run into a column, we take down a wall, something's not supported, you find asbestos you didn't know was there, those kinds of things. So that gets you to a total construction cost. We then add 20% for incidentals. Your incidentals column is going to cover your professional fees, so your architect and engineer's fees, any legal fees, insurance, bonding, furniture, fixtures, equipment, any of the other house costs that are in addition to the construction cost that get you that project. And so then that gets you to the total project cost in the far right column. So any questions on what you're seeing in this spreadsheet?
Nothing in particular. I have a question. Maybe it's a question it certainly evolves from this, and it has to do with the value engineering part of the process. And I guess my brain is already moving towards process at present, so that's why I'm looking at these line items and thinking, well, where there also there's considerations of the material, what kind of material, and there's going to be a lot of community input about, what kinds of materials we may or may not be using, which is either going to shrink or expand those. But I'm sure at some point we'll get to the line item sort of value engineering process.
We will.
Like.
What you have to remember is this is a campus master plan.
Right.
So at this point, we've kind of collected the data that we have available to us, and we have to assign, basically for most items, it ends up being a square foot cost or a lump sum based on doing something. And it's generally, we know you don't want the baseline worst materials. We're always considering maintenance and sustainability and things of that nature. So it's never going to be the bottom grade, but it's also not going to be the Taj Mahal.
Right.
So we find that medium zone. We do a lot of K-12 work. It's, over 90% of the work work for our clients. So we have a good understanding of what public schools feel is a good return on investment as far as material choice. There's still variables in that, whether you want, masonry or metal panels and things of that nature, but it's a campus master plan. When we get to, and we can certainly talk about adjusting costs if you feel something is not in line.
Curious about it, yeah.
When you get to putting out a referendum, we would have another layer of those discussions to see if, maybe we're seeing things a little bit different. And then again, there's another layer of that once you actually pass a referendum and we're really designing the project, and we would come with materials and proposed, sections and elevations and really talk through the details of what you're actually getting.
I guess my other question about value engineering is, and this is another sort of planning process, is that at what point in the process, let's say, and who is involved in this conversation when we're looking at all of the lines that are connected to the first phase, and we decide on a comfortable number that we have that may or may not be where you're pegged. Do we receive a sort of sense of how certain projects are tethered to other projects in phase one so that we can make a determination based on the things that we do want to invest in versus we may want to push into phase two, or just out of curiosity, that process?
What's in here in the description is the information we're able to give you. I think that's
Right.
easy. And some of them say, do not include this if you're not including that, or only
Right.
include this if you're including that.
Right.
So the things that are tethered together, such as we were talking about, the renovation of the balcony to additional
Right.
offices, we know you're not going to do that if you're not going to
Right.
until you do the auditorium. So we've tried to give you in the description information that tells you what's tethered together. But we also hope that this is a dialogue back and forth. So
Right.
as you come to us with feedback and say, hey, we'd like to move this to project 1, we think this can push till project 3,
Right.
we're not just going to do it, we're going to think about it, make sure it makes sense, give you any feedback that gives you insight on why we put it where we did, if we think there was a reason for that maybe you didn't understand.
Great.
And we'll work through that process. So I think that's really the bulk of my presentation. I'm here to take any other questions or go back through the report and look at, any other specific areas, but I think that's covered the highlights. Phil, is there anything else that you wanted me to touch upon that you don't think I got to?
I have a quick question. One of the traps that I have repeatedly fallen into at work is you put out a number, and then 3 months people are like, oh, you said $30 million. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you have actually very specific to the dollar number numbers on here. And I realize that the answer is going to be, it depends, but give me some sense here, because it's going to depend on value engineering, it's going to depend on interest rates, it's going to depend on time to execution. It's what's the likely range plus or minus on these that you would feel comfortable? What's your bell curve look like? Because I know it's not going to be, for as much as we might like it to be or expect it to be, it's not going to be whatever, $30 million and 437 cents, right? Yeah.
You'll find that is going to be the case even when you pass a referendum.
Absolutely.
Even when you're estimating through the design process, until bid day,
Yeah.
you don't really know what it's going to cost.
Right.
So that's why we have those contingencies in there. And at
So your
each,
contingency should cover it, so we're fine then, right?
in an ideal world, yes.
Yes.
Sometimes
So-
there's uncomfortable
so-
conversations.
Yeah, no,
but
I-
I will say, the first draft of this, we really had to quickly get it out the door, and some of the square foot costs for some of these additions,
Mm-hmm.
I looked at them and I said to Tom, I said, this is not an he's like, no, I know, it's not. We need to, and we talked back with our estimator and said,
Mm-hmm. Right.
I know you're seeing this square footage, but did you understand we're on a cliffside? Maybe you didn't understand what the foundations need to be here. Maybe you forgot about the stair tower. And we talked through the estimator to the best of our ability at a campus master plan, high level.
Yeah.
This is what we're looking
Right.
at. There's contingencies for that. When
Yeah.
you pass a referendum, again, there's still going to be some unknowns. You're going to change your mind. I mean, we haven't done all the programming yet. So,
Yeah.
Let's say, I'm just going to make something up, this STEAM lab. I mean, I don't know what you're going to put in there. I don't know what equipment you want to put in there. I don't know if it's a lot of casework, if it's a lot of furniture, if you want overhead cord reels. We haven't done that level of programming yet.
Right.
So we have to make some assumptions of saying, okay, generally in the K-12 market, these are the types of finishes, this is the type of thing. Okay, that feels like $400 a square foot. And some of it is just comfort level and experience. That's really all it comes down to in some cases. I know that's scary.
No, it's not scary.
But it's what we do, it's what our estimators do, and
I totally get it. I totally get it. What I'm wondering is that whether you've actually back engineered the number of projects that you've done and said, okay, so we put out a number of $30 million. We had these 5 things change, which we knew should have increased or decreased because they stripped things out or added things to it, and therefore we would have been at 35. It actually came in at 40, or it actually came in at 32, and here's the reason why. Like, that would be interesting to have some sort of sense, because I'll bet through all the projects that you've done, the number that you put out has never been the number, but there's good reasons why.
Yes.
So
let me walk you through the process, because really what I think you're talking about happens more in post-referendum process.
Fair.
So let me talk you through that process.
Sure.
We'll come up with a dollar figure, and it might, even your referendum value, if you wanted to go out with Project 1 exactly like it is, it may not be this dollar figure. We will talk about it between now and when your board approves that referendum to really refine what's in it. We'll do another layer of, programming and things, get comfortable with the number. You'll put that number out there. For the sake of the conversation, I'm going to say it's a $30 million project. We go through a design process. You'll get a construction manager on board, which at that point, they will take ownership of the estimating. We go through 3 design phases: a schematic design phase, design development, and construction documents. Schematic design is, again, high level, similar to this campus master plan. So you're not seeing a lot of floor plans and sections and elevations. It's a lot of narrative and understanding. We're working on this amount of square foot in this area. That's the schematic design. Out of that, the deliverable is a report, and your construction manager will estimate based on the narrative and discussions with us and see how that lines up with 30 million. If it's close, we continue to proceed. If they think, oh, we're way over, we're way under, we have those conversations of where are we not lining up, and is it just a misunderstanding, or do we need to change some scope and have some conversations as how we change things. We move into design development, where now we have plans and sections and elevations. It's not construction documents. It's not a full set of blueprints yet, but it's a lot more information. Again, they estimate that. We go through the same process. Where are we? Are we close to that $30 million mark? We have $30 million. What do we need to do to get in line? We do that one more time with construction documents. It goes to state ed for approval, comes in, and then bid day, you really see where you land. In some cases, let's say we think we have, let's say the estimates are coming back and it's 31 million, but we really want all this scope. We can identify a few alternates for bid day to say, if bids come in good, these are the additional things we'd like to do because we think we can afford them, or these are the first things we would take away or just modify. Sometimes it's not removing scope, it's just changing how you're doing it, changing a material or you're changing what approach. And we can build some of that in so that you do have a little bit of a lifeline on bid day to have some flexibility in how you achieve the project. I know that was all post-referendum, but does that help a little bit?
Sure. Yeah.
Is it too much?
No. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's good.
I was checking my notes of different conversations we've had over facilities in the main building for a while, and I realized I hadn't asked this question before. Is there a line here that covers the drainage issue here in the main building, the water issue that goes into the hall, the Haldane Falls, such as it is here?
River Haldane.
River Alley, yeah. Is that sort of structured into the phase?
There's some piping improvements in
That's
here.
a piping
replacement,
improvement.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And again, more investigative work
Right.
will happen to, figure out the cause, but we know there's an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
Just some additional information for the board. Our financial advisors are currently working with CS Arch to discern a financing strategy just as a baseline or outline for the board to have as a point of reference in the discussion. And the guidance that Catherine and I have provided to them is really take $30 million is a figure. What does that equate to in actual dollars for the average taxpayer at Haldane? No different than we do for our school budget development, when you see assessed valuations of homes and understanding, well, how would the school budget relate to an actual increase in taxes, and what is that amount? How would Project One, if you will, equate to an actual amount in taxes, and what would that be for a range of home values in our area? So we feel that's very important information for the board to have. I would expect you to have that information by the time we have the retreat. So in the next couple of weeks or so that we can have that as a point of discussion, and we do have this item on as discussion during the retreat. I'd like to send the draft report out to the community, or at least reference that it's posted on our website tomorrow. I see the next few months, including the beginning of the school year, as a period of time where the board can continue to hear feedback about the draft report. And also, more specifically, around projects that are included in Project One, or items that are included in Project One versus Project Two, because I think there's going to be some feedback on that for your consideration. And really, what I'm trying to do is set the board up to adopt the plan, not necessarily commit to do anything with the plan, but to adopt the plan in the fall. I think that's a reasonable timeline for you to have heard back from the community. If there's any further movement on items that are included in Project 1, 2, or 3, discuss that. As Melissa said, some of them are contingent on things happening first, but there's one or two that I think the base of the feedback would be centered around, and then for the board to be in a position to adopt the plan. And we can discuss it more at the retreat, but that's just a general high-level overview of how I think the next few months are lining up.
I do have a question. So I'm a little embarrassed that I don't know the answer to this. So I know when we finance our buses, it's for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
What's typically the amount of time when we do when a school district finances a big project like this? What's the number of years that you're financing over?
Your fiscal advisors would have to advise you on
Oh,
that. It depends
that would be
on
that.
referendums and
Okay.
additions.
And that'll be one of the things that we get. Okay.
I think
just
there's
didn't-
things that fall into a category of 15, 18, or 30 years, depending on the
Okay.
type of scope.
Okay,
So
that's helpful. Okay, that makes sense that it would come from them. But it's, okay, thank you.
And I assume part of that is going to be any roll-off of the high school.
Correct. So they'll look at our debt service currently.
Yeah.
And then they'll develop a debt service model.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking.
And they'll outline all of that so you can see in the development of the strategy what factors they're considering.
their calculations will also look at the scope, and I think you said your aid ratio is 30%.
About that.
About 30%. So in an ideal world, you'd have, state ed for a 30% aid ratio, but we know that not 100% of this scope would fall into the qualifications to meet that aid. So some of these additions may not. They may, whether you think you have sufficient space and we think you have sufficient space is different than the way state education may calculate, saying, okay, you don't have enough gymnasium space, we'll fund the gymnasium for you. So they will they'll look through this scope and have a good baseline to say, okay, 30% aid ratio, but we're only assuming, I'm gonna make up a number, 85% of it would be, qualifying for that. So they'll take all of that information into their calculations as well, so that they're giving you something that is realistic.
What determines whether it's qualifying or not
So
qualifying?
renovations will generally qualify.
Okay.
Site work counts as an incidental, so as long as you're doing enough work in your buildings, which you would be,
Okay.
you should be fine there. Building additions, generally classrooms generally fall as being aidable.
Yep.
Other spaces, such as a gymnasium or a cafeteria or an auditorium, you have to support, they have calculations on, so let's take the gymnasium, for example. Gymnasiums, they'll say for X number of students, you will need X number of gymnasium stations. Your gym, you may have, 2 gym stations in one gym, 2 gym stations in another. They may say, based on your student count, you only need 4 gym stations. Therefore, they may not support aidability of that gym. If their calculations say, oh, you need 6 gym stations and you only have 4, then you've made your case.
And in the particular case of Phase 1, currently named Phase 1, when there's the addition of classroom spaces but also student space, is that
It's not all or nothing. They will just take a portion of the square footage. So they may say a portion of that addition qualifies for aid, a portion of it doesn't. Is that what you're asking?
Would student space generally be qualifying or non-qualifying?
Classrooms, yes.
Yeah.
When you're saying student space, if you're talking about the cafeteria, I think that's a little bit different, and the office spaces are a little bit different. So the classrooms generally
Yes,
are
generally
fully
yes.
aidable. We generally don't have a problem with classroom space.
All right, so it may only be a portion of that piece.
Right, so
Yeah.
our fiscal advisors will work
Yeah, okay.
through all of that,
Okay.
and they'll generate an estimate
Okay.
based on their previous experience on similar projects.
Great.
Yeah. And Tom Ritzenthaler from our office, who's been here many times, is a bit more well-versed in that than I am, so he'll certainly assist in that process as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa, for all
course.
your
Melissa.
work.
Any
It's
other
extraordinary.
questions?
Thank
Good?
you.
All right, thank you.
Are we getting hardbound copies? They look so beautiful
So
online.
we can get you hardbound
No,
of the
I'm
draft if you want. I certainly expected you would want hardbound of the final. It's set up to be printed that way. We're just kind of ready for it to be final, and then we
Very
would do that printing.
cautious. We've already asked her to revise 25 things
That's-
between the
that's
draft
okay.
and now, so we're going to hold out a
More
little
important to
longer
get it
before we
right.
start
Digital
printing.
document, digital document. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Melissa. Safe travels.
Okay, moving on to communication from the public. The Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. The first public comment session is reserved for comments on any special presentations or active agenda items. For those who wish to address the board, please sign in, state your name for the record. I don't see anyone here. I'm going to skip to the end. Please leave your contact information with District Clerk Megan Shields for prompt follow-up from the board president or superintendent. I think we're fine. All right, moving on to information reports, beginning with Ms. Jamin.
The end of year is exciting. Our kindergartners were recently working with visiting artist Kim McCormack, who worked with them on creating their very own pop-up books and how to add pop-up sections. So, as an example, faces with mouths that spoke. And I will say the one I was most impressed by and had not ever seen them create before was planes that flew through the book and cars that drove through things. They were very cute books. So our kindergarten and first graders actually both worked with her. The kindergartners had a picnic during the lovely air quality control day that we were indoors. So our picnic was in the auditorium. As one parent said to me, you know, before I might have come to you and said, how could you not reschedule this picnic so we could be outside and do this a different day? But having lived through COVID, we just all are going to make the best of what we have going on here. So I'm here, we're having a picnic in the gym, reading books with my kid. Everybody was happy. So that was fantastic. And we also had January Auckland, who visited our third grade for a residency. They had done their countries of the world research projects and then put on a play where they flew to different countries and met other travelers and explained to each other what they had learned about the countries they visited. So we had 3 flights. I don't know if you noticed our air traffic control, but 3 flights landed in our auditorium and took off and went to 9 different countries and reported back. And I gotta say, it was very cute. And watching the performance, January was on the floor of the auditorium and the kids were on top and they were really watching her. And I was like, is she like holding up cue cards? Is there a teleprompter down there? Like, what is going on? But nope, she was just down there being positive and encouraging. And so they had memorized and written and performed their lines all with, you know, just 2 weeks of writing and rehearsing and going through that. And they made their own cues. So if it was like, you know, something they learned about the ocean, they had said, like, if I forget my line, make an ocean. And so she had like these different hand motions that each kid had designed for themselves in case they forgot their lines. And it was great. So they performed for our, it was the third grade, so they performed for the second and fourth graders as their dress rehearsal, and then for their families in the afternoon as their final performance. And then our fourth graders got to go to Albany for the first time since I've been here, which is really exciting. That trip had been canceled for COVID, and then a lot of the buildings they would usually visit hadn't opened for tour groups. We could have gone to Albany, but once we got there, there would have been limited things to do. But this year, the Capitol building was reopened for tours, as well as the New York State Museum was open for large groups. They got to go to the Corning Tower for the observation deck, and they tied this into their New York State curriculum, the social studies curriculum on New York State. So it was very exciting, and they really enjoyed it. And that was through the Haldane School Foundation supported that trip. All right.
Great. Thank you,
Any
Ms. Raymond.
questions?
No? Good. All right. Dr. Silke?
Good evening, everyone. Social emotional learning is one of the most important parts of middle level learning. And one of the best ways to reach that social emotional learning mark is through extracurriculars and co-curriculars and shared experiences. So I was thinking back in the last 4 to 6 weeks of school, and our students, our 6th graders, went on the Clearwater sloop trip. They went on their trip to the Met. All grade levels went on a whole school trip to Renegade Stadium for Education Day. Our students, our 6th and 7th grade students, wore a shirt that was designed by Alara Clemenson through the Student Council, and our 8th graders wore their 8th grade T-shirts. All grade levels went on grade level trips to spins on the Hudson. This was another project they worked on through the Student Council. A small group was able to attend the Climate Summit at Garrison. That's an activity that we're hoping to see grow over the years. There was the K-12 art show that many students got to attend, but then also the artwork remained hanging in the hallways, and many students comment on each other's work throughout the time that it was displayed. The middle school concert, of course. Alice in Wonderland, that was very widely attended and very well received. The Music in the Parks trip, and of course, our regular old field days. And all of these experiences play into the social and emotional growth of our students. So I'm very proud of these, and I'm very thankful for your support. It's an honor to serve the families of Haldane. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Silke. Ms. Sniffen?
I was going to start with all the fun activities, but I think I'll start with Regents exams. Today was, for us, our last day of Regents testing. We don't offer the Algebra 2 Common Core, as many of you know, or the physics. So today was our last day. We offer the Geometry Regents. But I just want to take the opportunity to thank the teachers in terms of juggling, proctoring, and scoring, and going through a crazy schedule of movement and what are we using. You know, we try not to shut down the auditorium for the entire time of testing. So we really do a lot of shuffling and moving to enable that the students are in air-conditioned rooms and trying to find spaces to test. So I want to thank everybody for their flexibility during the last 2 weeks here, and the extra time putting in for extra help for students. If students come and stay during those times, it's great they have that opportunity. I also want to recognize our BOCES graduates, students who graduated from BOCES programming by name. Jake Mason, Chris Moore, David Fisher, Albina McFadden, Dylan Haran, Nick Meissner, and Megan Ferreira, Megan was also inducted into the Technical Honor Society. That is noted in our program at graduation, but I just want to make sure that I publicly recognize those students. And our Senior of the Year this year, which is a tradition started by Ginny Padala back in 1993, our Senior of the Year this year was Matthew Gingulis, which was quite an honor for him and his family. And graduation was wonderful. The weather held out. I have never received so many emails and text messages for 2 straight days. Is graduation was going to happen or not. So we preemptively put out a message that said, we will announce if graduation will happen at 5 p.m. on Friday. They still asked at 3:30. I was still getting emails, and it's not 5 o'clock. At 5:02, I got an email that said, it's after 5. I said, the message is queued up. It just hasn't gotten to your household yet. But I just want to thank everybody. I thank Dr. Benante and the Janine Gingulis, Christy DeRosa, the class advisors, Kristen Papero and Marilyn Granisi, for the amount of work they put in. If you haven't, I know many of you were there, but if you haven't had a chance, I think Megan captured a lot of the pictures, and you can almost relive the ceremony through those pictures. So Megan, thank you for that. Anything else?
Thank you, Ms. Sniffen. Dr. Kasian?
Thank you, President McNall and trustees, Dr. Benante. So I continue to be really excited about our hires as we all invested a lot in making a more robust special education system at Haldane. We had to hire for this new special class, and it was actually kind of a tricky hire because we needed someone who had a certification at the kindergarten level, but we also needed somebody who was very passionate about this kind of position. So we're really excited about the appointment of Miss Rachel Gordon tonight, and I think she's going to be terrific. We also have 2 aides for the program that have a lot of experience and are, I think, prepared to hit the ground running, but also have the right kinds of attitudes that is essential when we're trying to do such an innovative and inclusive program. We're also looking to open up a couple of sections of adaptive PE for this group, so that's another exciting endeavor. Around the PPS department audit, I have received the report, and we're just going through our first round of drafts, but that should be in the board's hands around July 5th so that you have time to look it over in time for your reorganization meeting and hopefully get to sink your teeth into it a little bit. We are also hoping to have at least 2 action planning meetings with PCG to start to talk about how we can turn some of those recommendations into some actionable steps. So that's the goal, so to make this information sort of useful and to put it into practice. And then finally, we had a really, really exciting evening over at Garrison where we were able to meet with some of the parents for the new special class that we're partnering with over there. We're calling it the Bridge Program because it's kind of a bridge between the 2 communities. And Allison Emig, the principal, and we haven't quite agreed on the acronym for Bridge, but we have a really good group of people that are coming together, and I was able to go over there with Kevin Moon, our occupational therapist, who will be going over at least twice a week to support the students. We'll also have our BCBA, our behaviorist, Samantha Fawnin, will be going over at least once a week, maybe twice. But they have speech and language pathologists and school psychologists, so together we're putting together a really solid program. If you're interested, I provided a copy of the presentation. Okay, you should have found that link. But I thank all of you for your support as we try to create this program.
Great. Thank you,
Any
Dr.
questions?
Dr. Cation, if you wouldn't mind, the report for PCG.
Yes.
I know that's forthcoming. A draft is forthcoming, correct?
I have the draft in hand.
You have the draft in hand.
Not
okay.
in this
Got
hand,
it.
but
And I
in
know
my
we're-
office.
Understood. And we're working through when the presentation or formal presentation being provided to the board, and something we're just being mindful of is bandwidth, if you will. It's we want to make sure that the report or presentation is provided at a time where we'll have an opportunity for good community engagement. Now, it's a very busy time. Obviously, we had the campus master plan report, but as we get ready for the start of next school year, we'll be sure to include that as a workshop topic.
Great.
Actually, which now raises a question which I
Sure.
didn't have.
Yep.
So there's clearly some recommendations in the report, and you're going to be meeting with them about that. And so I guess, but it sounds like then by the time, I guess I had always envisioned the processes. There'd be the report from the auditors. We'd hear that. There'd be some planning, and then we'd find next steps. But it sounds like it's really going to, because of the timing, all that may happen at once. Is that?
I think it's going to be, I won't say it's exactly phase 1, 2, and 3 like the master plan, but there are certain things that are linked. So for example, we've been doing a lot of work on our master schedule, and there are some aspects of the master schedule that I think we can manipulate a little bit to support how our continuum of services, for example. So that would be like a consideration that we might do. The other thing is that some of the things that were already started are things that are being highlighted by PCG as things that, yes, you needed to start those things. So I think that we are headed in the right direction, but certainly I look forward to your receiving it, and that's kind of why I wanted to make sure you had it for the reorg meeting, so that I can get your honest opinion and feedback too. And I think it'll come down to prioritizing some things. There's some things that may take several years to roll out. So I do look forward to your input on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Keisha. Mr. Elder?
Good evening, everybody. I want to take a moment with everything that's going on in our schools to highlight an event that some of our teachers participated on June 5th. We participated in the first annual what's called Future of Education Collective that was facilitated by PNW BOCES. This kind of grouping was created out of a regional need that most school districts were finding about creating a forum to have conversations about topics that were current events, quite frankly, on kind of the leading edge of our profession, and trying to find a way that we recognize that every district is kind of grappling with that, but trying to provide a forum that brings people together to kind of collectively look at ways that districts are addressing some of these things as they come up with us, instead of rather catching up with it, trying to get a handle on it proactively and really learn from other colleagues in our regions about some steps that they're taking. The nice design about it is the topics are going to be changing every single year. This year's focus was on artificial intelligence and how that is impacting the educational landscape. That continues to be an area that was a very clear area out of most region about an area that we're trying to really address in a lot of different ways. So Haldane sent an 8-member team that consisted of an elementary teacher, middle school and high school teachers. Leah Horn, the technology innovator, and Terry Eckes, the school librarian, and myself are members of that team. And we went on June 5th to the initial meeting, which included a keynote address, and then had several breakout sessions that teachers could sign up for based upon their interest, and then kind of a debriefing process. We met as a team briefly afterwards to debrief, and we're actually getting together tomorrow to kind of debrief our collective experiences. This forum is going to continue into the fall of next year, so the June 5th was just kind of like a kickoff meeting that they provide a lot of articles and a lot of reading, a lot of catching up that we can do, and so as we continue to kind of explore this topic into next year. What I can tell you from the entire group, and not just our group, is that there are two real themes that emerged out of this conversation. The first is really looking at what opportunities does artificial intelligence provide to enhance teaching and learning. So really trying to take a look of, we're not trying to ban everything, but where do the opportunities lie that actually enhance our practice? On the back side of that, one of the major conversations that's taking place is what policy changes need to be looked at or implemented. That's kind of the regulation part of it, about the results of AI. And so these are kind of the two areas that we'll be focusing on as we look at it in the summer as well into next year. So the conversation continues next year, and we look forward to providing updates as our understanding progresses.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Elder.
Yep.
And I believe that Mr. Bauerlein and Mr. Twardy, do you have any remarks or comments about that?
No, well, I do. I always
Great.
say I said no, and then I say something. So I'll try to get better at that. I just wanted to note that Mr. Bauerlein's wrapping up his time with me, but Mr. Cunningham was on campus today. Mr. Bauerlein
Great.
was showing him around for a little bit, so I know Mr. Cunningham's beginning his transition into the district over the next couple of weeks. Formal starts July 1st. And I want to just thank Mr. Bauerlein again publicly for his work with our students and our staff over the course of this last school year. We had a lot of successes. Obviously, the board is well aware, but John provided some much-needed continuity in the department while we went through our search, and we look forward to Tom's start.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Benante. All right, moving on to our committee minutes, I believe, or consent agenda minutes. Thank you. These are minutes. All right, great. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
These are our, let's see, minutes from June 6th, the education business meeting. Any comment? No? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right. Moving on to committee minutes. Any notes from the policy committee?
I think the only thing, the minutes are pretty self-explanatory. I will say that I found it very gratifying that we got our audit back this year, and we're going to be able to go through all the policies that they sent us in a single meeting, and we'll be finished. And that felt like a very major accomplishment. So that was nice. So felt good.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So we're just keeping going.
I have a quick question. It must have been like 2 NYSBA newsletters ago where there was an article on the 5 policies you need to
Oh, I remember reading that.
review and vote on every year. Do we do that? Let's assume that, I'm going to assume that we do that, and let me know when we do that.
Oh, so I need to go back and know what 5 policies, but yes, I mean, that's what Erie One does,
Okay.
is they actually have our entire policy manual, and their responsibility is, we'd have I remember reading the article and thinking, oh, we have all these policies.
Yes.
And then, and that's what the audit is. They go through our entire policy manual, and they update those policies that need to be changed to reflect either strong recommendations or regulations or something along those
anything that's
lines.
in
But actually,
I read it as there were 5 that we specifically actually needed to vote on every year. I will go back and dig it up.
yeah, that would be good. Actually,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll double check. I can't,
Okay.
That's how I read it, but yes, Erie does a great job keeping us up to snuff.
Yes.
Perfect.
Great. All right. Well, to be deed whether or not we are fully compliant. Moving on to consent agenda financial. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
All right. And a number
may.
of things here. Please.
I just wanted to acknowledge and extend my thanks to Ronak Kapoor, who was completing his Eagle Scout project and wanted to commit his time and energy on that project to the outdoor classroom located out by James Pond. So if you have the opportunity to walk out that way, you'll see new benches and a new table and a new storage area that Ronak provided to the school through his service. And in addition, item 3 includes some additional funds for its continued maintenance and upkeep that can be used in the years ahead. But the space looks great. He did a great job on his Eagle Scout project. And I think we'll have some photos of that included in our newsletter this month as well for the
I think
community.
there's also a photo of like a rarely seen like weasel or something that Mr. Wick took a photo of. And so
Okay.
what was it? It was.
It's like a weasel.
It's a weasel.
Oh,
There's a
rarely
weasel.
seen
Ferret,
weasel.
weasel.
Not
Whatever.
associated with the Eagle Scout project. That's just Mr. Wick's
Just exactly.
Yeah,
But
exploration out there.
location
Doesn't
of
surprise
the
me.
Eagles.
Doesn't surprise me.
I've seen it. Looks great. It no longer looks like we have a permanent resident in the Nelsonville woods. It actually looks like
Right,
it.
right.
So that's great. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. All right. Moving on to consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
All right. Here we have it. Please.
I just wanted to acknowledge Miss Christina Staffu, who's in the audience. Christina, raise your hand. Christina is being recommended to fill a 2nd grade position here at Haldane next school year, and that comes from the increase. There's been some other movement that we anticipate, so I'm going to tie this to the increase of an elementary section in next year's budget. Christina, we've had the ability to work with now 2 separate times, and with the creation of the elementary position, we'll have the opportunity to work with her now on a probationary basis. She's been so well received by our students, her colleagues, and our families. So it's with great pleasure that we recommend her for a probationary appointment this evening.
Welcome. I also wanted to just pull out, because I have a personal connection to Miss Jen Gillio, who is going from a part-time TA, or I should say a teacher's aide, to full-time. And she's been my son's sort of go-to person for this entire year and has been an extraordinary support. She's a wonderful human being, and I think it's going to be perfect for the class. So I'm very pleased about that. So congratulations to her. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. All right.
And just a quick congrats to Ms. Jammin, whose tenure is now
Just
official.
happened. Congratulations.
The remaining tenure candidate in the audience.
Can we just pull that one out?
Can pull that one out now. It was not pulled out. So we would have pulled it out if we could. If we knew you were going to stay, we would have pulled it out and then given it to you specifically. All right. Moving on to our board committee reports. Policy committee update. I guess we've sort of had one. Nothing from WIPSPA. All right, moving on to unfinished business. This is the approval of the revised memorandum of understanding with the Dutchess Community College for college credit courses. I think we all remember this conversation. Megan?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the revised memorandum of understanding with Dutchess Community College for college credit courses for the 2023-2024 school year and authorizes the superintendent to sign the agreement on behalf of the district.
Great. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
I just would add,
Please.
Mr. McNall, thank you, that a major point of advocacy was asking Dutchess Community College to somehow incorporate tuition relief for students of whom school districts could demonstrate had some sort of financial hardship. And I'm pleased to report that there was some movement on that from Dutchess's initial stance that students who school districts can again demonstrate that there's some financial hardship will receive 50% reduced tuition on the already reduced tuition rate. So for a 3-credit course, that's expected to be about a cost of $90 to those students, whereas their peers would realize a cost of somewhere around $190. So that was good movement on this.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, moving on to new business, CSE, CPSE recommendations. Ms. Shields?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the Committees on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as presented.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, now the next is the approval of the bond resolution, which is a roll call supermajority vote, correct? All right. Ms. Shields?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the attached resolution authorizing the purchase of student transportation vehicles and maintenance vehicles for the Haldane Central School District at Phillipstown, Dutchess, and Putnam Counties, New York, at an aggregate maximum estimated cost of $183,000, and authorizing the issuance of $183,000 serial bonds of said school district to pay the costs thereof.
May I have a-
President,
Oh, sorry. go
sorry,
ahead. Yeah.
nope, it's you.
That's right. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
All right.
President McNall.
Yes.
Vice President Clements.
Yes.
Trustee Clemenson.
Yes.
Trustee Headland.
Yes.
Trustee Valentine.
Yes.
Great. Motion is passed. Wonderful. Moving on to communication from the public. Since no one's here, I will save everyone that paragraph. And moving on to board reflections. I have a couple. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a
No,
quick one.
Please.
I went to the first grade picnic for that poetry reading, and it was incredible. I'll leave it there. It was amazing to see the amount of community support, and that's not really normal. So that's actually a really cool thing about Haldane. I mean, you saw all these families there having lunch with their kids. And we were outdoors, that is true, but that was really cool.
I do. I participated as a chaperone at the 4th grade field trip to Albany, and it was wonderful. That's the big class, 60 kids, and they had a wonderful time. And it was really, there were 2 parents to every 3 kids. So, these are parents that, I've got a long history with now, 5 years in. So it was lovely to sort of spend the afternoon with so many of them. I didn't take the chartered bus as per my son's request, but he did something pretty extraordinary that he'd never done before, which is we were told the night before that the kids could bring in a DVD and there would be a vote, and whoever won got to show their DVD. And we had who has DVDs, first of all, but we picked up a box of DVDs on Phillipstown Free Cycle on Facebook, and we had them, and Declan grabbed one out of the box, which was a surprise to us because he does not watch television. He does not watch movies. He's never watched a movie beginning to end. And he picked The Sandlot of all movies, which he'd never seen, which I adore. It's like, perfect movie. That's a great movie. That's a good movie for a bus trip. So he took it in, and fortunately there was only one other kid who had a movie, so they selected the movie. And he watched it from beginning to end, just thoroughly wrapped, and was the first time he'd ever watched a movie. Couldn't happen without, that, all the things coming and, aligning in a great way. So. And now maybe he'll have an affinity for baseball. We'll have something else we can connect about. I can't wait. It'd be great. That's my one thing. The other thing I wanted to say is I wanted to just sort of say in public that I've, after a lot of thinking about my future as involvement with the board, that not that it was ever a foregone conclusion that I would continue to be the president. I'm certainly not seeking the presidency moving forward. I think that we all know that balancing sort of the personal experiences and emotions of being a parent in the district with being a trustee can be challenging, and they can be difficult at times. And I'm going through a period right now that's very challenging, and I think it's in my best interest, certainly, to, continue as a trustee, but to pass leadership on to one of you who I have nothing but admiration for. So, like I said, I've remained fully committed to my current role as a trustee, and I'll continue to dedicate myself to excellence here at Haldane, obviously, and championing the needs and aspirations of all our students. So thank you all very much for your support and your patience with me this year. Great.
Please, that's been easy. That's been easy. Thank you for continuing on. You bring a phenomenal amount to this board. We really appreciate it. I want to say that I attended 2 moving up ceremonies. So the 8th grade today seems like forever ago, which was phenomenal. And to see kids you haven't seen in a long time, this is when they start to change. You're like, oh, wow, okay. But also the graduation on Saturday, which is, if you've never been, you should go, because it is a phenomenal experience. The number of people who were there who did not have kids who are seniors, just there participating as a community, it's amazing. It's amazing. So, well, congratulations to Ms. Sniffen and everybody who put all that together. It was a great event.
At the risk of one more thing, so I was also at the 8th grade moving up ceremony today, and the tradition for that ceremony is to have the president of the high school student council give some advice to the 8th graders moving up. And Mateo Cerrone gave a speech, and it was really, he went on and on about how much people cared for him when he was in high school. Like all the people, all the teachers that cared about him, and Mrs. Sniffen, and it was just really clear that he had gone through those 4 years feeling really very, valued and cared for as a person, which I do think is something all of our schools, but our high school does very well, and it was really nice. It was just really nice.
Great.
And so I really appreciated all the people in the high school that made all those high school students feel that way.
And I just echo that. This is my first high school graduation that I attended, and it was amazing. I've heard about it for decades, and it was the bell ringing. I mean, all of that, to experience that, and it's just lovely. So it was a wonderful job. So thank you for the invite.
Dr. Benante?
Yeah, just 3 things. So, great. Enough's been said about graduation, but the community presence is something that really stands out each year. I look forward to the day of being able to sit on the hill, as opposed to sweating on the knoll. Yeah, great day, no doubt. I did want to mention to the board that we do a small recognition of our retirees on Friday, the last day of school. Peggy, I believe you plan to stop by, but board members are welcome to stop by. If you do plan to, just please let Megan know, just so we know to look for you. There's a brief staff meeting, and then each of our retirees has an opportunity to say a few words and also ring the bell in the same tradition as our graduates. And we have, I believe, 4 individuals who are recognizing on Friday with, I counted the years on 3 of them. I got to 90 over 3, and then the 4th, I didn't have the years listed. So we're over 100, I know that, collective years of service. So again, this is a bittersweet week for many of our retirees and their colleagues as we say goodbye, but the start of good things after Haldane. And lastly, I just wanted to thank you, Sean. I have had the pleasure several times over the last 5 years of being able to speak to superintendents about board superintendent relationships and how to cultivate a positive relationship between superintendent and the boards. And I've had the great honor and pleasure of serving a community that's had an outstanding Board of Education, and that is no better represented by the board leadership. So it's been an honor to work with you over the course of the last several years. I know you'll be continuing on as a trustee, but thank you for the many conversations, phone calls, and text messages that occur in between that nobody really gets to see, but that are very important in helping keep our district moving in the right direction.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Excuse me, may I have a motion? Second, please.
So
I'm
moved.
sorry, I'm fading. I'm
Second.
sick, yeah. Any discussion? No. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No.